Hopefully at this point you're more or less familiar with the basic principles of operant conditioning. We know that operant conditioning is a branch of the learning perspective and that it involves shaping behavior through punishment and reinforcement. It's based on Thorndike's assumption that when a behavior is rewarded, it will probably reoccur, whereas if it's punished, it is less likely to be repeated. This principle is known as the law of effect. Reinforcement encourages behavior while punishment discourages it. Now, reinforcement can be positive or negative. Positive reinforcement involves rewarding a behavior with something pleasant, while negative reinforcement means either removing something unpleasant or giving a person the means to avoid something potentially unpleasant. Now, punishment, as you probably know, involves responding to a behavior with something unpleasant so that the behavior is less likely to reoccur in the future. Now, behaviorists, of course, don't just randomly reinforce behaviors whenever they feel like it. Instead, they follow an organized system, typically adhering to some kind of a schedule of reinforcement. Reinforcement schedules can be based on how many times a desired response is repeated, or they can be organized around an interval of time. A fixed ratio schedule of reinforcement, which is usually abbreviated FR, involves rewarding a behavior after a predetermined number of repetitions. In a variable ratio schedule of reinforcement, the number of repetitions needed to get a reward varies, but it's usually based around an average number. Now, before I go any further, I want to draw your attention to a person whose work receives a lot of attention in the field of operant conditioning. B.F. Skinner was a behaviorist who famously designed what he called a Skinner box, which was a device that released food whenever a lever on the box was pressed. If you were a subject in one of Skinner's studies and Skinner was operating on a fixed ratio schedule of reinforcement, the box would release food after a fixed number of lever presses. So maybe Skinner would decide to reward you every 3 times you press the lever. If Skinner decided to reward you every, 2 to 6 times, then he would be practicing a variable ratio schedule of reinforcement. Now, the other 2 types of reinforcement schedules you should be familiar with are fixed interval and variable interval schedules. In a fixed interval schedule, the person modifying the behavior waits for a predetermined amount of time to pass before administering the reward. This period can be 5 minutes or 30 seconds. Any amount of time really is acceptable depending on the goals of the behavior modifier. And just like with the ratio schedule, if a person decides to vary the amount of time in between reinforcements, he's operating on a variable interval schedule of reinforcement. Now, if you have a job, let's say your boss pays you every 2 weeks, he's using a fixed schedule of reinforcement. If he pays you whenever he feels like it, which probably wouldn't make you too happy, let's say every 1 to 5 weeks, then he's operating on a variable interval schedule of reinforcement. So let's test what you've learned so far. Let's say I have some issues with my self-confidence and I decide to reward you with a piece of candy every 3 times you compliment me. What kind of reinforcement schedule would I be operating on? Now, of course, this is an example of a fixed ratio schedule of reinforcement. Now, what if you were a student in a 1st grade classroom and your teacher decided to reward you for every 7 to 10 minutes of good behavior? What kind of a schedule would this be? The answer is, of course, it would be a variable interval schedule of reinforcement. So let's review schedules of reinforcement briefly. We have a fixed ratio and variable ratio schedule of reinforcement. Both involve rewarding a person or animal based on how many times they repeat a behavior. Like the name suggests, that number can either be fixed or it can vary. The fixed and variable interval schedules of reinforcement are based around a period of time, which can stay the same, such as receiving a paycheck once a month, or it can vary around an average period of time. Research has found that the variable ratio schedule of reinforcement is usually most effective in reinforcing a behavior and is the least susceptible to extinction. This might explain part of the reason that gambling and slot machines in particular can be so addictive. Occasionally, you may also hear about continuous reinforcement schedules, which I haven't mentioned, but all this means is that a behavior is reinforced after every repetition.